Hello, everyone, and welcome to Agulhas Current Affairs, a marine science podcast set in Southern Africa with me as one of your hosts, Dr. Jonas Kirsten of Kikoskimi Media. And today, for the first time on the show, we have a couple of guests. They're coming in from the Ocean Impact Initiative, as well as a few other organizations, and they're going to be chatting to us today about marine protected areas. Welcome to the show, Lauren and Kendall.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Before we get into the nitty-gritty of MPAs, would you ladies mind introducing yourselves and kind of what you do in the ocean space?
Sure. So I am Lauren Vanekak, and I look after all campaigns and communications at the Wild Trust. We're an environmental, non-profit, non-government organization based in South Africa.
Hi, everyone. I'm Kendall Wright, and I'm the scientist for the MPA expansion project primarily, but I work across a range of projects at the Trust, particularly in the marine protected area space.
So how do you kind of go about explaining to people who might not be aware yet what exactly MPAs are and what their importance is to everyone?
Sure. So I think a way that we like to refer to them that makes it easy for people to understand is almost likening them to game reserves in the ocean, unfenced game reserves in the ocean. Basically spaces where species and habitats and ecosystems can thrive, safe spaces specifically for endangered and threatened species, places where species and marine life can feed and breed and make lots of babies and keep their populations thriving and growing. Also, marine protected areas, science has shown us they produce bigger and more fish. They also help mitigate the impacts of climate change. They really are just kind of these thriving, amazing spots that help build on the health of the wider ocean.
I just always think that the easiest way really to explain an MPA is, like our little bank account in the ocean. It's like the place that we protect and we look after it in the long term so that we can reap like the interest that comes out of it, if that makes sense, just to really make it simple. So often they for us are also very important cultural spaces and spaces that we can go into the natural environment where
they're also great
natural.
tourism hubs. You end up finding that because they're these beautiful underwater spaces, that you kind of build all kinds of tourism activities around them as well.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. So like if you do a marine biology or maybe a biology undergrad, so even the new secondary school curriculum for marine biology, you might be aware of MPAs and just how important it is, and you see articles all the time now coming out about the various benefits, but despite all of that kind of scientific evidence, why is it still so difficult? We're only at 5% now, as you guys have been posting about. Why is it so difficult to get more of it protected?
So, the marine space is a really complicated space. We're all the time we're working in 3D. So for a start, you've got stuff that happens at the surface and stuff that happens at the coast, and then you go down through the water column all the way to the benthos, to the bottom. And that means that there's often multiple stakeholders in these spaces. So these stakeholders all have competing interests. And often it's the loudest voice in the room, which in the South African context is often the one that says they create the most jobs and money. So, for example, when we're going in and trying to secure these areas for protection because they're important, we can often come up against very loud voices which have a lot of money to push back. Maybe from the oil and gas sector or offshore mining that's becoming a thing, or even unsustainable fishing, like industrial fishing practices, which can be quite a loud voice for us to push against. That being said, when you actually get down into the nitty-gritty of it, often these marine protected areas protect habitats and support livelihoods, which we don't see, we don't quantify. So it makes it much more difficult for us to push back. But we're obviously, hopefully, changing that narrative. And there's very good science out there that prove how these MPAs are supporting people going forward. So I think that's the primary thing, is that competing resource use, that there's a very complex space that needs lots of stakeholder engagement. And then we also have resource and capacity limitations, particularly in government. I mean, generally government is underfunded. We don't have a huge amount of money, and that obviously plays down that the environment is not always seen as a priority, even though it should be a priority because it's what we are really basing most of our livelihoods in South Africa on. So yeah, it's a very complex space. But saying that, it's not that it can't be done. It takes dialogue like
Sure,
this.
100%. I do remember, like, to get to this spot took like quite a while. I remember I watched a seminar by, I think, Mandy Lombard. She works in the space, right? And they were like, it took like
Yes.
19 years even to like get to this spot where we are. So trying to double it, I imagine, is going to be also a bit more work in terms of communications. But speaking about that, the way I got in touch with you guys was because of your new media campaign that's called Where is Our 10 online. So how did this whole thing come about?
So, Where's Our 10? Basically, we launched Where's Our 10 ahead of COP15, which is currently underway in Montreal. And essentially, one of the things that will be discussed there is obviously Target 3, which is 30 by 30. And essentially, 30 by 30 is the target of trying to get 30% of our oceans and our lands protected by the year 2030, which is just over 7 years away. So we don't have a lot of time. And 30 by 30 is also, it's an urgent goal, and it's a minimal target. So 30% is the minimal amount we need to basically keep our oceans alive and thriving, and ensuring that they are able to keep giving us everything that we take. So linked to this 30 by 30 target, we as an organization that obviously has a lot of passion and a lot of interest for the country in which we are based, South Africa, we really wanted to use Where's Our 10 to put a spotlight on all the benefits that marine protected areas bring, and also trying to urge the government to take the step and to expand, because obviously the more each country contributes to that global goal, the better it'll be for the globe. So as a country, 5.4% is obviously not enough. And in terms of our planning processes, it seems that we are pretty far along in that process, and we kind of feel like the government, and especially the NGO sector, like we're all ready and geared up and happy to help and happy to support in helping the government get increased protection over the line. So essentially, Where's Our 10 being released in the social media space, and actually also being pushed out, predominantly on social media, and actually, interestingly enough, by some influencers, which is very exciting. And just trying to use the hashtag to show South Africa that South Africans are in support of them taking this step, and giving us more protection and contributing to this very important global goal.
Yeah, and I think just to add to that, sorry, Yanis, I know you highlighted that it took us 19 years to get to this point, and I think it's very key here to know that it took us 19 years because we didn't have the systems in place and we didn't have the data available. But there's been a comprehensive data collation done that's been driven by SANBI, as well as the Department of Forestry, Fisheries and the Environment. We have a very good national biodiversity assessment, which is, I think, being updated next year. It was done previously in 2018. It came out in 2019. We have a much better idea of not only what we have out there, but what we need to protect and where we need to protect. So the critical biodiversity areas map is available, and that highlights those areas for protection. So yes, it took 19 years to get there, but it put us in very good stead. And the Pakisa process highlighted 10%. So we said we'd do 5 as a stepping stone, and by 2020 we'll hit 10%. Obviously with COVID and all the issues around it, we've taken a bit longer, but we are definitely ready. South Africa is extremely good at that conservation planning process. So hopefully this next 5% it's not another 19-year process. It is another year or two process where we deal with stakeholders and really engage with them to make sure we choose the best places that we can do that limits impacts on the existing infrastructure and existing industry where we can, but also prioritizing to protect those critical spaces.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. We hope that it accelerates, like a J curve. It doesn't plateau. Yeah,
sure. We're always hopeful.
What are you guys with this campaign doing differently in terms of communications and education and trying to convince people versus like previous kind of works in the space?
Sure. So I feel like this campaign, in terms of its concept, I mean, it was kind of really light and fun and playful, and trying to really make MPAs this cool, fun, mainstream thing, right? Because previously, we've kind of taken various different approaches, and we found that actually being playful and playing a little bit on humor, keeping it light, really just making it this thing that, we can do together, making it supportive, making it positive, as opposed to kind of pointing fingers and going, come on, government, 5.4% is not good enough. What's wrong with you? Let's step it up. We've certainly changed that approach to, come on, this is what South Africa needs. This is what the globe needs. This is what our oceans need. Let's just pull together and also stop making it everybody else's problem, right? Because every single person, whether you work in this sector or not, can play a role in helping our oceans.
For sure, 100%. Like, I mean, the kind of like doom and gloom way of going about it can only take us so far, I suppose. So at some point we've got to try all different types of ways of speaking to people.
And also, I mean, we're also trying to tap into the social media space in a way that, that we haven't before. Like I said, we've kind of got influencers supporting this, and, that in itself has ensured that our communication is reaching people we've never reached before. Often with these sorts of environmental campaigns, you end up kind of preaching to the choir, right? Because you have all these people like yourself that love the ocean and are passionate about the ocean and want to help. We really need to be reaching those people, even people inland, sitting in Joburg that don't, get to go to the ocean often, people that don't get to stand in the sand, don't get to see the impact of all the waste being washed up on shore. So it really is just trying to get this campaign and these messages in front of people that they wouldn't ordinarily meet, and helping them realize they can make a difference too.
Yeah, for sure, 100%. So actually, like, getting these kind of marine ranges going and like planning it out and getting it, put into place. It's more of like a legislation and a law type of thing, right? But what can individual people like do to help this process along?
Sure. So from a campaign and comms perspective, obviously just pushing out the hashtag and sharing content off the Ocean Impact SA pages on socials. Obviously, we have informative, educational content as well all the time outside of this campaign. So pushing the Ocean Impact campaign content out on your personal pages and kind of spreading the word is obviously helpful. We also have an appeal. We're trying to get to 100,000 signatures. I think we're on about just over 3, so we've got a long way to go. So we need all the help we can get, and it's literally will take you 2 minutes. You just need to plug in your name You don't even need to give us email addresses or anything, any other information. We'll just add your name to that list of names, and then basically that appeal document will be sent to government to show them that these are all the South Africans or people across the globe that support MPA expansion in our oceans. So yeah, that's a way that you can help in terms of the campaign. Kendall, in terms of legislation and that sort of thing, I think it's quite tricky how people can get involved, but
Sure, it is tricky, but saying that there are processes that are underway at the moment, and they're often put out there. If you follow government websites on Facebook, they also have social media, so the Department of Forestry, Fisheries and the Environment, the white paper on conservation and sustainable use, that's been put out for comment, and it will have another round of comments. So these are all like key points where people can put through comments, and I know people are always scared and nervous because they're like, oh, I don't know that much. But I mean, everyone's opinion is important that they can put it through. And often it's, people that think they don't know that much, but are really working on the ground in these spaces that have seen the changes. So fishermen that see the change in what they're catching, you can really guide people in government and in science to look out for these like key areas that we need to work in. So I think people always think, oh, it needs to be someone that's, more educated than me to get involved. But it's very important that the general South African population says, actually, we need to protect our environment. And why we need to protect our environment is because every second breath is the one that always comes up. It's coming from the ocean. So we need to be involved all the time. And the more people that are involved means that the environment's voice is louder, and it means it gives us more pushback. And we see that very clearly with the oil and gas industry now, whereas before we often got steamrolled by seismic activities or oil and gas production that they want to put in, and the communities have said, actually, no, this is not what we want. And they've come out very strongly, and we've seen that voice. And these aren't necessarily university graduates. These are people that live on the wild coast, that fish, that subsistence fish, and that have lived for like hundreds of years in this way, that have said, actually, we're allowed to make our decisions for ourselves. So I think that's really important to remember.
Oh, definitely. So check out Ocean Impact and find out where's our 10. But beside talking about MPAs, what else can people what changes can people do today to just protect the ocean in general?
Sure. So there's some nice practical things that people can do in their personal capacity. So the first one that we always tell people about is an amazing app that WWF developed called the SASSI app, SASSI. And essentially, you can have that app on your phone. You're sitting at a restaurant, you're in the grocery store, you're about to buy this fish, you're about to order this fish. You can go onto the app, you can check whether it's sustainable, whether its populations are in trouble, whether it's sustainably caught. All of that sort of information sits there on that app. And, I think really as consumers, we really need to start making better informed choices. Obviously, first prize would be to cut seafood out of your diet entirely, because
that is the simplest thing to do. Yeah, it
is the easiest thing to do. But if you can't bear to cut seafood out of your life, then the SASSI app is the answer. So that you're at least making educated decisions. Another way is to always carry around your reusable coffee cup and a reusable water bottle. It is an investment in the environment and in the future, because plastic is just the devil. Even the disposable coffee cups, not even the actual cup itself is recyclable, because it has like a film layer on it that ensures that heat doesn't come through the cup. So never mind the plastic top, but the cup as well. And the issue is as well, people say, oh, but it says that it's recycled, and often plastic can only be recycled once, and then it's in the environment indefinitely. So really, just in terms of reusable water bottle, because single-use plastic bottles are just also awful. Reusable coffee cup, Sassy app, recycle if you don't already, obviously say no to straws, and then also just in terms of your decisions when you go into supermarkets. So I know sometimes there's certain retailers that have lots of plastic on their products and make it tricky, but most retailers these days are trying to allow you the opportunity to take your own bags and fill your own bags up with your fruit and your vegetables and those sorts of things, so that you're not actually buying them covered in unrecyclable goodies. Polystyrene's another one that's not recyclable. So those are helpful things that people can do today.
For sure, definitely. We did a whole episode about WWF Sassy and eco-labels. So if you want more information, I'll link that somewhere. Kendall, do you have any more to add? Any more tips, tricks?
Yeah, I think, it's always the one that gets the heart of people, particularly being South African and loving a braai. It's just to be a bit more cautious on your meat and your dairy intake. I mean, the impact that meat and dairy and fish have on the environment is large, but saying that, it's the same as with being careful about plastic usage. Most of us are never going to be zero waste, but we need to do the best that we can. And I think that can often translate into the way we eat, that, trying to cut down on our meats, trying to have meat less frequently and dairy less frequently, and looking at different options. I think that's for me the best place that you can really affect change. And encouraging your friends. Sometimes peer pressure is the best pressure in this kind of a situation.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Days, for joining. It was a fun and informative chat. Why don't you let us know again how we can get in touch with this campaign, or with you guys, if you like?
Sure. So oceanimpact.coza is the web address. For all details around all things MPAs. And then obviously on socials, we at Ocean Impact SA, or else our organization, Wild Trust. It's super confusing. We have 2 social media pages, but one is Wild Oceans SA, and the other is Wildlands SA, both linked to the Wild Trust. Obviously, one is our terrestrial work and the other is our marine work, but we'd love to have people follow us there and support and amplify everything that we drive there.
Yeah.
Cool. And of course, you can catch this show at Agulhas Current on Twitter, at Agulhas Current Affairs, everywhere else. And we'll see you guys on the next episode. Cheers.
Bye.
Thank you so much.